All right, fellas, last one for the evening is going to be, of course, college football. You know, our selection processes came and went, had a little bit of debate, but overall, we got our 4 teams. Of course, we got Alabama versus Notre Dame, and then we got Clemson versus Ohio State. And let's go ahead and start with the Alabama game. Obviously, Notre Dame slides in the 4th spot. They're going to go play the Crimson Tide, and we know what happened in the SEC Championship. Obviously, Alabama had to score 50 to win, while Notre Dame pretty much got clocked by Clemson, and the game opens up as a 19.5-point favorite for Alabama. So, Drink, know you know a little bit about the Tide, and do you see any surprises in this game, or do you think the line is about on point?
Hold on, hit that line one more time for the people.
That says 19 and a half.
Woo,
Spicy.
We see what they don't and say what they want. Here's the deal. All right, so I know y'all seen the AP, the first team AP All-American. You know, Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Alex Leatherwood, Landon Dixon. Well, he's not going to play in the playoffs, but Landon Dixon. You know what I'm saying? Then you have Patrick Surtain on the defense, first All-American team, on the defense player to make the first team. I say all that to say this. We ain't playing. Hey, Notre Dame, we ain't playing. We coming out here, hey, with it, the fighting Irish, you better be ready to fight. Because we're going to turn this thing back into 2012 if y'all don't get it right. Y'all don't get it right, we rolling. And look, one of the underlying things of this game that I don't think people even know, Notre Dame is going against Alabama for the best offensive line, the Joe Moore Award. So this is a game that has probably the top 2 best offensive lines in the country. So these trenches about to go down, baby. But here's the deal. Unlike everything else Alabama has seen, Notre Dame does not the traditional spread you out. We're going to get it down the field. I'm sorry. I think Notre Dame has enough talent to be in the playoffs. I just don't think they have enough talent to stay competitive with Alabama. They're not on the same field with Alabama. Because, you know, I've said this plenty of times. I'm not the biggest fan of Ian Book, and I don't think Ian Book has the talent on as far as the wide receivers. Now, he got some tight ends. Can't say their name. He has some tight ends that's going to probably show up. Some big boy tight ends. And like I said, the offensive line is great, which tells you the run game is great. But I just don't think Notre Dame has enough through the air to really make Alabama, threaten Alabama, especially a motivated Alabama. Listen, here's the deal. These teams that came back, one of the most senior-laden teams in the country, they want to win a championship. We bees on that mission. That's why the lines look like it looks. But at the end of the day, you can't just disrespect a team like Notre Dame to say, they don't deserve. I hear a lot of people say they don't deserve it. They shouldn't play Alabama. It should be somebody else. Whatever the case might be, this team has played, I think, about as good of a schedule as, you know, any team that's 4 and below. I'm sorry. They have. They're here. It is what it is. We'll see the results. Now, let's talk about the defense, because that's what I think the key is for this game is both defenses. Notre Dame has a better, on paper, Notre Dame has a better defense. However, we all know this. Alabama played a lot more talent than Notre Dame played this year. They just call it what it is. You take them 2 Clemson games out, and you're like, who the heck, what? Cincinnati, what? You know what I'm saying? Coach Garrett, you know what I'm saying? That's what you say. But they did play Clemson twice. That does matter. But listen, for all my Tide fans that say, oh, our defense is shaky. Of course it's going to be shaky against Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask. Oh, by the way, you know Kyle Trask a finalist for the Heisman? So don't feel bad about that. You know, the guy only, breaking records for Florida. Kyle Pitts, are you kidding me? Dude, I don't care who they was playing. You're not stopped. Not one team has stopped Kyle Pitts this year. Now, I know Florida lost 3 games, but in the games that he didn't play, no one stopped him. You know what I'm saying? They just didn't score enough points, or they flailed around like they did against Texas A&M, and Texas A&M got them, you know. But it wasn't for a lack of scoring. As you've seen in the SEC Championship, Florida can't score a lot of points. They just can't stop a whole lot of people on defense side of the ball. So there go to, you know, the dilemma. But with all that said, I think the defense is, and I know this is going to sound outrageous, but I think our defense is a little tad bit underrated. And a team like Notre Dame, I just don't, like I said, I don't see that they'll be able to spread us out. So I think the defense will have a good day, and I do think we'll be able to spread out Notre Dame. Here's the deal. Notre Dame, as good as their defense have been this year, they have not played an offense as potent as Alabama. No disrespect to Clemson. I got it. But Clemson, you ain't no Alabama this year. You don't have the guys that just out here. I mean, you take Travis Etienne away, I want to see what Clemson can do. Unlike Alabama, you take Najee Harris away, we still got them killers on the outside. Mac Jones going to be willing and dealing and dropping pineapples like it's a Hawaiian Punch commercial. Holla at your boy. So with all that said, listen, I like the 19 points. I think this game, I'm looking at it, I think it's 48. I give them 48-24 Alabama.
That's probably about right. And that line, by the way, that you referenced right off the bat, 19.5, yeah, that's generous. This somebody set this line at about 2021, and the boss man was like, hey, no, slide that down a little bit. That's just too disrespectful. But Alabama's 3 touchdowns better at least than Notre Dame. Like I said in the the NFL NFC playoff picture, and much like you can go back to last season's college football playoff, this is a case where you got 3 teams that stand out and no doubt, in my mind, deserve to be in. And then you got one team that you got a college football playoff where you have 4 teams. So rather than have 3 teams and just the old BCS where you plug in 2 and then one team's mad that they didn't get in, well, we plug 3 in and then what we looking for a 4th. We'll just slide. Yeah, just come on in, Oklahoma. Come on in, Notre Dame. Just come on in and lose by about 30, and then we'll play the national championship. And that's what's going to happen here. Notre Dame, a lot of respect to them. I mean, this Notre Dame's a good football team, and I think they're deserving to be here, even though I got questions about them because when you look at their best win of the season against Clemson earlier in the season, Trevor Lawrence did not play in that game. So, I mean, and it took them, double overtime to even win that game. And then you come out in the rematch in the ACC title game with Trevor Lawrence and you get steamrolled. And that 34-10, and again, I don't think the game was that close. And I think the big difference for me, and it's the same thing, you got 3 teams that stand out above Notre Dame, and no position on the field is more indicative of that than the quarterback position. Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence are leaps and bounds above Ian Book. And I apologize in advance if that's going to hurt some Notre Dame fighting Irish feelings. Ian Book ain't that good. He's just not. He's a nice player. He can make plays outside the pocket. He's got good speed, but he's not beating you from the pocket, throwing the ball 50 times. And that's what this is going to come down to. I think Alabama's defense, I think they much improved. This isn't the Alabama defense of last season that just got embarrassed repeatedly, whether it be Joe Burrow, whether it was Bo Nix. I mean, there's just a plethora of occasions.
Hey, listen, hold on. First of all, let me slide this little tidbit in.
Here we go.
Hey, ain't no shame in losing to Joe Burrow last year.
That's true.
So he was on fire. But that Bo Nix, right.
You know that
shame
that
Bo Nix, that was, hey,
rough.
I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
But you know that, and I know Patrick Surtain is the only guy, probably like the biggest household name on that defense. But I think this defense, I think you're probably onto something as far as this defense being underrated. As the season's worn on, they performed admirably. I mean, this is a defense that I just read a statistic. They're giving up like 3.2 yards per carry on the ground. And I mean, if that number holds and Notre Dame can't run the football and it comes down to Ian Book having to go step for step with Mac Jones and Devontae Smith, yeah, you go ahead and forget that. And for Notre Dame's defense, I think it's pretty clear that whenever you play Alabama, and I would like to think that every defensive coordinator has, game plan said, all right, well, we got 2 options. We can either try to stop the run game and Najee Harris, or we can, pull more resources to stopping the pass game and going after Devontae Smith. And I don't think whichever way people want to go, they can't stop either. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. I mean, these guys, you look at the box score for 3 guys. It's Mac Jones, Najee Harris, and Devontae Smith. And every single week, Devontae Smith and Najee Harris, they're good for at least 2 or 3 touchdowns, and one of them has 200 yards. I mean, it's something like you've never seen. I mean, I thought when Jalen Waddle got hurt, that would spell trouble. It ain't spell no trouble. Devontae Smith just turns it up another notch.
He might win the Heisman.
He's been fantastic. I mean, it seems like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns is like his low mark. It's incredible. I mean, and I think that score is about right, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 4+ touchdown victory for Bama. This should be easy.
Yeah, I sat here just thinking if I could think of any way to maybe devil's advocate for Notre Dame, and I really can't. I mean, they do have a solid defense, and if you can somehow, what Florida could not do in the SEC championship is they could not get any break. They could not get any. The whole Alabama thing is they don't make any mistakes. Like even on that defense, the 1 or 2 times they made a mistake, I didn't have a safety behind me. I'm about to get beat. They grab the guy. And yeah, you get a pass interference, but you stay in the game. And the one time they throw a pick, the dude gets hit stick so hard, he's still laying on the field. And they go the ball right back. Like it's some crap you see in Madden, and you're like, what the hell? So they play mistake-free football, man, and it's smothering. And you saw Florida, man, they scored almost every time they could. I mean, but they couldn't run the ball, and that defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. So Notre Dame has a better defense, and they can definitely run the ball, but what you're going to see is Alabama has the speed that Notre Dame just doesn't have. There are not enough elite athletes that Notre Dame has that Alabama has. Like they're not going to match up. And I think in the Clemson game, what really got exposed was the fact that Clemson's defense really is what let them down the first time in that game. I mean, yeah, no Trevor Lawrence, but DJ, Fresh, whatever his name is, he played a fine game too. What I think some got overlooked in that Clemson game, they were without their starting middle linebacker too. And he's a guy that's been there for like 7 years or something. Like he's the captain of that defense, and that can be a big thing for these defenses. Guys were kind of misaligned. They didn't know where they were supposed to be, and you saw him come back and all of a sudden Notre Dame could barely barf out 10 points. So I agree. I think this is going to be ugly. And like I told y'all pre-show, I don't think Alabama gets tested like Florida did the rest of the year, but we'll see, what happens.
And can I say just because you brought up a good point about Notre Dame in comparison with Florida, I think they do have a better defense. I think they do have a better run game with this guy, Kyron Williams, who I like, but they don't have Kyle Pitts or Kadarius Toney. So they're not, Alabama's going to hit you with splash plays and there's going to be a couple 40 to 50 yard bombs. Notre Dame's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read these stats while I'm in the dark here before we move on. They lost to Clemson the last time we saw this, 30-3. Before that, Ohio State in 15, 44-28. In 2012, they lost to Alabama 42-14. I can keep going back to 2006 and beyond. Notre Dame does not show up in these big games, and there's no reason to think they're going to start doing it now, to me. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We have an actually close game. We got Clemson and Ohio State. I know Ohio State has some questions about their 6-0, especially one Dabo Swinney, but is what it is. The ESPN's index is 50-50, but Clemson is getting 7.5 from Vegas on the line. So you want to start us off on this one, Jay?
I think, I'm not always a fan of rematches, but I think this is going to be interesting. And best team in the Big Ten, even though we know the Big Ten was late to the party. Ohio State ain't play a lot of games. And as much as I thought, you remember my argument from last season. Ohio State, they played a legit schedule last year. Their resume to me was a lot more impressive than Clemson. And the thought process behind picking Ohio State last year was Clemson was they were going to struggle in the early part of the game to where they adjusted, kind of to Ohio State's talent, Ohio State's speed, because they've never seen a team like Ohio State. It's not going to be that way this time around, because really, in all actuality, I mean, who's really tested Ohio State? I mean, yeah, Indiana kind of gave them a run late in that game after I think Ohio State was up 35-7. They ended up winning by a touchdown. But outside of that, I mean, there's nothing really impressive that they've done. You got Rutgers, you got Maryland, Michigan State. I mean, there's just not a lot. I mean, it's 6 games. So, I mean, there's really not much to point to. And I just get the feeling, and this is for both sides, I get the feeling Ohio State, they're just not quite as good as they were last year. I mean, there's no Chase Young. They don't quite have the offensive firepower that they had last season. I mean, it seems like just recently this young kid, Trey Sermon, the transfer from Oklahoma, I believe, he's kind of burst on the scene lately. But just there's not a bunch of household names outside of Justin Fields. I mean, you have what's the defensive Sean Wade? You got him in the defensive backfield. But by and large, it's kind of it's Justin Fields and just some dudes out there. And then, I think you make probably a similar argument for Clemson. I mean, we know the ACC isn't that much to write home about, but they did get 2 games against Notre Dame this season. We know North Carolina's improved this season. We know Miami is, for what it's worth, they're not fully back, but they're competitive and they fighting for second, just like every other team is in the ACC, because they can't touch Clemson yet. So Clemson, really, you can look at them and say they've been the team that's been more tested so far. The whole idea that Trevor Lawrence was going to maybe struggle a little bit because no T. Higgins, no Justin Ross. Well, Amari Rodgers has played, he's been tremendous as their number 1 receiver. Travis Etienne is still outstanding. And really, that's about all they need. As good as Lawrence is, as good as Travis Etienne is, just told you how good Amari Rodgers has been. And just with the way they coach those guys up, I mean, Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables, I mean, I don't care much for either one of them, but I mean, they're to be respected. I mean, they're great at what they do. They built a tremendous program down there that is, it's rivaling Alabama for best program in the country. So I think when it's all said and done, I don't have the same feeling that I had about this game last season. I think what this game comes down to is Justin Fields throwing the ball from the pocket. And, if he's able to improve upon what he did in the semifinal game last season, then Ohio State, I think, they could have a great shot. But, as well as I do, last season, Justin Fields in this game from the pocket, he was not good enough. He made some poor decisions. He made a poor decision late in that game that cost him the game. And you recall early on in that game, Ohio State had, several opportunities to really, lay a knockout punch on Clemson in that first half, and they couldn't do it. They ended up settling for about 3 field goals. It was 16-0. And then you had that, they had that ill-timed targeting call in the second quarter. They got that game turned around. I don't think that's going to happen this time. I just don't think Ohio State's, they just haven't played the competition that would kind of give them that first half advantage that they had last season. And because of that, I think Clemson wins this game by, 10 to 14 points.
First of all, I want to thank Ohio State and Clemson for providing us some good high-class college football level entertainment. The coaches, that is, bulletin board for both. I love it. Dabo, Ron Day, keep it going, baby. I love it. Because somebody going to eat that crow when the game is over. Let's keep the smoke going. Bring college football back again. Listen, with all that said, this is why I like Dabo. Dabo know he got a good team. Unlike most coaches, he ain't going to, give you the cliche answer. He just out here, he's just doing it all. He gonna rub it in, he gonna let you know his team better, and he's just gonna be all types of tomfoolery, and I'm all about it. Because you know what? You still gotta play the game. Either way, with that said, oh yeah, Clemson gonna beat Ohio State by 21 points or more. Oh yeah, because I think this head game that Dabo is playing, first of all, I think Dabo is the better coach. I'm not sold that Ron Day is that good of a coach. He's a good recruiter. If you want to talk about him recruiting, I'll be like, yeah, he's one of the best. But X's and O's, I haven't seen anything that says he knows how to really draw up the plays and win a game. I didn't seen that with Dabo. I didn't watch Dabo outsmart Nick Saban. I haven't seen that with Ron Day. So when all the chips on the table, I'm going with the proven commodity. The proven commodity is Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers. Brent Venables, and whoever the offense coordinator. I don't know who the offense coordinator. I've been watching them for the last 5-6 years, and I can't tell you who the offense coordinator was any of those years. It's always Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables. I don't never remember seeing the offense coordinator.
Trevor Lawrence's hair.
Exactly.
Trevor Lawrence, the offensive coordinator.
It might be Justin Ross. Either way, I just, this year, much to the agreement of what Jay was saying, I just don't think Ohio State that good. I just don't. And then another thing is this: Ohio State hasn't played like steady football to get good. It's been stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. Now you got this break before the playoffs. When do they get a rhythm? At least Clemson did have a rhythm with and without Trevor Lawrence at one point. The old DJ was like, "Oh, I like this. You sure he let him catch Corona again? Let me spin it some more." Like they had a rhythm, right? So Ohio State is the one team of the four that never caught a rhythm. On top of the fact that they never caught a rhythm, the best team they played was either Indiana or Northwestern, and it depends on the fan base you talk to. So that's the best team that they played up to this point. Clemson is gonna blow the doors off as far as the competition and the athletes, the talent, the speed of which they played this year. Like it's gonna be a big mismatch. And the problem is the one thing Ohio State could have had on their side is, well, they're gonna be fresher because they play less games. Well, that's a two-sided coin. Because yes, they might be fresher. They don't necessarily mean they're gonna be better. They're just gonna be fresher. But they still didn't play as many games. Did you not see how this happened recently? You have these teams that play 5 games, and then they play a team like BYU, then they play like, I don't know, 11 games, and then BYU go smash them, and people are like, oh well, BYU was just better, or maybe BYU was just they're more cohesive as a team. Maybe we overlooked that part. So I just don't think Ohio State have the rhythm. I'm not the biggest fan of the coach. I haven't really seen him make this outstanding, excellent, and O's plan under the brightest lights. So with all that said, man, I got Clemson. I got this game 35-14. Clemson. Dabo about to come out here talking reckless after the game. And if he lose, I expect Ryan Day to talk reckless after the game. So let's keep that smoke, baby, because we want it all over there at Bama. We'll see you in Miami, January 11th. Holla at your boy.
Yeah, man, I hope Drink's not right, because that's gonna be some pretty boring football on Friday.
It happens.
I can see it happening. I really could. When I look at this matchup, I think it's pretty simple. I think these teams recruit somewhere evenly. They both top 5 recruiting classes every year. I think the athletes and all that, they got guys on both sides of the ball that can do stuff, run around, all that fun stuff. Dabo's a much more proven coach than Ryan Day, but Ryan Day didn't fall into that job by mistake. But you're right. He's got that Kirby Smart feel of, has he ever really showed you, beyond a doubt, he can get you over the hump? We don't know that yet. But I look at the quarterbacks, and on one hand, we have that guy that was it Lawrence, I think it is. He might be all right, but Justin Fields this season hasn't looked good. I mean, he just hasn't had a game in a big moment or in a big game where you're like, oh yeah. I mean, what are the 2 games this year they've really had to push? It was Indiana and it was Northwestern. Okay, against Indiana, he threw 3 picks. He was 18 of 30. He did have 300 yards. There were some big chunks in there. In Indiana, granted, a pretty good defense, but he threw 3 picks. I mean, you think Indiana's got a good defense? Well, Clemson's got a pretty good one too. So, look out for that. And then in the Big Ten championship, Trey Sermon had to run for 331 yards. He destroyed Eddie George's record. I mean, he destroyed Ohio State's all-time record. I mean,
hold on. And what was this? Do you remember the score of the Big Ten championship game? The final
22-10. It was a
22-10 game. That ain't gonna get it done. 22 points ain't gonna get it done against Clemson. I'm telling you that right now.
Exactly. Fields in this game was 12 of 27 for 114 yards and 2 picks. They looked miserable in the first half. I mean, Justin Fields couldn't have went to the beach and threw it in the water. I mean, it was awful. So I don't think he's that bad of a quarterback. I don't think this is really a fair representation. I think Northwestern pretty much sold out to slow him down. I mean, a guy doesn't run on you for 330 yards by mistake. I mean, that you were doing something wrong, or you were selling out for something else. But it's just hard to imagine that with what we've seen out of Ohio State and what we see out of Justin Fields this year, that they're going to be able to go in and play Clemson and Trevor Lawrence and the story, the established commodity they are, and win. Now, I think with the talent, it's going to be close enough where it'll be a game. I hope it's not a blowout. We know the other one's going to be, but I got to think that Clemson's probably going to handle them. I think it'll be a little bit better than Notre Dame's game, but I'm still seeing about a 10 to 14 point game, maybe close in the first half. Clemson kind of opens it up late. But I mean, I hope I'm wrong, because it could be a lot more fun if you got 2 great quarterbacks going at it. But so far from what we've seen, there's no reason to think Justin Fields is going to do what Trevor Lawrence can do, or even half of what he can do this year.